The numbers alone are staggering. Over £4 million owed to Coutts Bank, more than £860,000 spent annually on private trainers, flowers, and medieval banquets, and an alleged £2 million loan request to Jeffrey Epstein, all tied to one woman, Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. But the deeper scandal, royal insiders whisper, is not just about her. It is about the system that allowed her and her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, to indulge, overspend, and mislead a cycle of privilege and denial that has now detonated in the heart of the monarchy William seeks to rebuild. This isn't merely a story about a duchess who loved luxury. It is about financial rot beneath the gilded veneer of royalty, a rot that stretches from New York penthouses to Nevada deserts, and from Buckingham Palace ledgers to private Swiss accounts. When palace auditors quietly flagged discrepancies in early 2024, unexplained wire transfers linked to dormant accounts associated with Fergie's former ventures, it triggered what one insider called a forensic firestorm. The investigation, initiated under the authority of Prince William, now the de facto power within the royal household, uncovered a series of disturbing connections between Fergie's past financial dealings and unreported payments involving the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. According to leaked documents reviewed by investigators, Ferguson's debt trail did not vanish after her divorce in 1996. It merely went underground. The Duchess of York, despite losing her royal income, continued to live as if she were still inside the royal payroll, flying first class, employing a retinue of stylists, and maintaining a household staff larger than some minor royals. The funds came, in part, from shell companies and speaking contracts in the United States, some of which are now under review by the UK National Crime Agency's Economic Division. But perhaps the most damning revelation was that Prince Andrew, stripped of his royal duties in 2022, had continued to subsidize parts of Fergie's lifestyle through money routed via private estates linked to the Duchy of Lancaster. While no formal criminal link has been established, the optics are catastrophic. The same family who once lectured the nation about fiscal responsibility now faces allegations of backdoor financing, insider favors, and silent bailouts. A former palace aide described the relationship between Andrew and Fergie as financial codependency masquerading as loyalty. Even after their divorce, they shared the same home, the same staff, and it now appears the same debts. Andrew couldn't say no to her, the aide confessed. Every time she got into trouble, he dipped into something: a trust, a loan, a friend. It became their cycle of survival. It was 2010 when emails surfaced showing Ferguson personally thanking Jeffrey Epstein for a £15,000 loan, adding chillingly that she was on his team. At the time, it was dismissed as a lapse in judgment, but the new palace audit reveals a longer, darker trail, including a £2 million correspondence-linked request made through an intermediary in 2012, when Fergie's finances were again collapsing. This was not a one-off act of desperation, said a source close to the internal inquiry. This was a pattern: borrowing, hiding, apologizing, repeating. William, who inherited not only the throne's moral burden but also its financial oversight, was reportedly deeply disturbed when the findings landed on his desk in March 2025. According to multiple palace correspondents, the Prince of Wales immediately ordered a comprehensive financial transparency review for all royal households. His instruction was unambiguous: no one, past or present, will use the Windsor name to enrich themselves again. For William, this was more than damage control. It was a declaration of reform, a line drawn between the modern monarchy of accountability he and Catherine envisioned and the era of entitlement and secrecy symbolized by Andrew and Fergie. Inside Royal Lodge, the sprawling Georgian residence that Andrew and Fergie continued to occupy despite eviction orders, investigators found invoices that painted a portrait of royal excess gone rogue. £1,800 for rose-scented imported linens, £12,000 in unpaid catering bills from 2023, £9,600 in annual dog care fees for her 5 Norfolk Terriers, and a £47,000 purchase order labeled Wellness Enhancements Nevada Project. I maintain that Nevada Project turned out to be Pegasus Group Holdings, a failed £3 billion crypto mining enterprise that promised to turn sunlight into Bitcoin. Ferguson's role as global brand ambassador earned her £200,000 up front and potentially £1.2 million more had the scheme succeeded. Instead, the company collapsed under lawsuits alleging fraud, and Fergie's name reappeared in the headlines she had spent decades trying to escape. She keeps falling for gold-painted fantasies, says one former friend, recalling how Fergie jumped from health teas to cryptocurrency. each venture more absurd than the last. If it glitters, she thinks it's her redemption. Yet, what makes this crisis uniquely explosive is not merely Fergie's behavior, but how close it runs to the institution's inner circle. Royal financial records suggest that certain security expenses and property maintenance fees tied to Royal Lodge continue to be covered by public funds even after Andrew's fall from grace. In short, taxpayers may have been indirectly supporting Fergie's lifestyle long after the monarchy insisted she was a private citizen. Sources within Kensington Palace confirm that William has now commissioned an internal audit codenamed Project Purity. Its purpose: to untangle the financial web left behind by Andrew and Fergie, and to prevent future reputational contamination. The project's first phase, launched discreetly in April 2025, reportedly included freezing all pending royal allowances tied to the Duke of York's estate and reviewing dozens of consultancy contracts bearing Fergie's signature. Behind closed doors, the mood is grim. William's patience with the Yorks has run out, said a senior courtier. This isn't just about money. It's about restoring trust, showing the world that Windsor will not tolerate another generation trading its name for checks. For decades, Sarah Ferguson's chaotic finances were treated as an embarrassing footnote. Today, they have become a symbol of everything William wants to erase and everything the monarchy can no longer hide. In the words of one royal historian, Fergie's downfall is not a tabloid tragedy. It's a cautionary tale that if you build your palace on borrowed money, sooner or later, the crown itself becomes collateral. The order arrived in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered from Kensington Palace to the wrought iron gates of Royal Lodge, the 30-room Georgian estate, once symbolizing quiet privilege within the Windsor grounds. Its message was simple and final: occupancy review under the Crown Estates Act effective immediately. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson faced the unthinkable, the loss of their sanctuary. It wasn't a tabloid rumor or a polite suggestion from the courtiers they'd long ignored. It was an instruction from the man who now controlled the monarchy's purse and its moral compass: Prince William. Behind that envelope lay weeks of forensic accounting, whispered meetings at Clarence House, and a wave of disclosures that had shaken the institution. The York Financial Review, initiated under William's new reform directive Project Purity, had unearthed a tangled mass of unfiled debts, opaque consultancy fees, and decades of unreported assistance extended to the Duke and Duchess of York. Among the findings was a £1.4 million discrepancy involving private security reimbursements, claimed for Royal Lodge at a time when Andrew had already been stripped of public duties. Investigators also discovered £280,000 in transfers from entities connected to Ferguson's failed American ventures, funds apparently used to pay maintenance staff and groundskeepers still listed under royal payrolls. When the audit report landed on William's desk in late April 2025, its tone was blistering. It accused the York household of systematic misuse of institutional resources under the guise of personal hardship. One line, underlined in red ink, reportedly caught William's attention. The Duke and Duchess have maintained a joint domestic operation of royal scale without official sanction or financial transparency since 1996. For the future king, this wasn't just about money. It was about integrity, optics, and inheritance. Every headline about Sarah Ferguson's failed Bitcoin deal or her cash for access schemes reverberated through the monarchy's fragile effort to modernize. Every unpaid invoice and untraceable payment reminded the public that the Windsors, despite decades of reform, were still vulnerable to greed, disguised as entitlement. According to senior aides, the confrontation between William and Andrew occurred on the 2nd of May 2025 in a curtained chamber of Buckingham Palace. It was brief, tense, and unsparing. "You've had 30 years of chances," William reportedly said, his voice low but immovable. 30 years of excuses, headlines, and hidden loans. "I won't let this continue under my watch." Andrew, pale and defiant, argued that Royal Lodge was his private leasehold, acquired through legitimate agreement, but William was armed with legal counsel and historical precedent. The Crown Estate, he reminded him, reserved the right to revoke leases compromised by misconduct or misuse. "The monarchy doesn't owe you a castle," he said flatly. Within hours, palace legal teams began drafting the revocation order, a move unseen in modern royal history. For Fergie, who had called Royal Lodge "my anchor, my safety," it marked the collapse of her last illusion of permanence. Insiders described her as shaken, weeping, and furious. Yet even in crisis, she was said to be contacting journalists and exploring media opportunities to tell her side of the story. As the eviction loomed, an even darker thread re-emerged. The Epstein files, re-examined as part of the palace inquiry, revealed evidence of multiple cash transfers and loan requests involving both Andrew and Ferguson between 2008 and 2012 years after Epstein's first conviction. A confidential annex, prepared for the internal review, described how Epstein had allegedly extended financial accommodations to both Yorks during their lowest ebb, including helping restructure Fergie's debts and arranging introductions to American investors. Whether Andrew knew the full extent of Epstein's financial entanglement remains uncertain, but the optics were disastrous. William's advisors, aware of the global outrage Epstein's name still carried, urged swift and visible action. The Royal Communications Office was instructed to avoid direct comment while quietly signaling that the Yorks no longer held any formal or financial association with the Crown. A senior palace official summarized it bluntly: "The institution must choose between nostalgia and survival. William has chosen survival." Within days of the confrontation, contractors and estate staff began withdrawing from Royal Lodge. Security personnel were reassigned. The royal crests on the property gates were discreetly removed. Trucks from the Crown Estate's maintenance division rolled in to catalog furniture and paintings belonging to the royal collection. News leaked before the palace was ready. Tabloids splashed the story: "William evicts Andrew. Royal Lodge seized in financial cleanup." Public sentiment was mixed pity for the fallen prince, admiration for the heir who dared to act. But within the family, shockwaves spread. Princess Eugenie reportedly pleaded for leniency, while Princess Beatrice tried to broker a private settlement. Their appeals, however heartfelt, collided with the hard truth. William had set the monarchy on a collision course with its own past. Catherine, ever the strategist, is said to have advised her husband privately that mercy must follow justice. But even she acknowledged that the York scandal had crossed a line from embarrassment to liability. Observers note that William's intervention marks a profound shift in royal governance. Under Queen Elizabeth II, family disputes were handled with quiet endurance. Never complain, never explain. Under William, the principle is different. Explain everything, so there's nothing left to complain about. In the wake of the York audit, all royal households, including those of Princess Anne and the Duke of Edinburgh, were asked to submit full financial disclosures. The monarchy's accountants, once ceremonial fixtures, now function as a genuine internal compliance unit with the power to suspend allowances and investigate irregularities. For the modern monarchy, transparency has become its last defense, and for William, it is personal. He watched his grandmother's integrity eroded by the scandals of others, a royal biographer noted. He's determined that his reign will not carry that curse. But as investigators continue to sift through the wreckage of Sarah Ferguson's finances and trace the last of the Epstein-linked accounts, one question lingers over the walls of Windsor: how deep does the rot go? And who else has benefited from the shadows she helped create? The answers, palace sources hint, may upend more than the York legacy. They could expose an entire generation of royals raised on borrowed wealth and inherited denial. By the time the Royal Lodge eviction order became public, palace investigators were already tracing the financial veins that had kept Sarah Ferguson's empire of illusion alive for nearly 30 years. What they uncovered was not a single act of extravagance, but a labyrinth of corporations, shell companies, and private investors, a parallel kingdom built on charm, borrowed money, and fading royal prestige. The web stretched from London to New York, from tax-free Caribbean accounts to a Bitcoin mining scheme in the Nevada desert. Its pattern was always the same: a promise of transformation, a rush of publicity, and the inevitable collapse. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became that Fergie's financial life was less a series of mistakes and more a system one designed to convert royal access into personal liquidity. After her divorce in 1996, Sarah Ferguson reinvented herself as a motivational speaker and lifestyle entrepreneur. In the United States, she was marketed as a self-made duchess, a woman who had overcome scandal to become a symbol of resilience. Her brand included self-help books, weight loss partnerships, and endorsement deals with companies ranging from Weight Watchers to Avon. But behind the glossy rebranding lay chronic financial instability. Tax filings from her U.S. ventures between 2001 and 2015, now part of the palace audit, show irregularities that suggest cross-border fund movements between her speaking company, Hartmore LLC, and British accounts tied to her former staff. Several payments described as consulting expenses matched dates when Ferguson was publicly struggling to pay off debts at home. When questioned by royal accountants, one source close to the Duchess allegedly claimed, "She was always chasing the next lifeline. If one deal failed, she launched another. America gave her the applause she craved and the investors she needed." Among those investors was a network of financiers connected to Andrew's post-naval circle, some with links to offshore banking hubs in Jersey and Bermuda. Although no illegality has been proven, the discovery of overlapping accounts between Fergie's companies and Andrew's trust funds added fuel to William's determination to purge what he called the Royal Financial Twilight Zone. The most audacious venture came in 2019, the Pegasus Group Holdings partnership. The company promised to revolutionize cryptocurrency through a £3 billion solar-powered Bitcoin farm in the Nevada desert, a utopian fusion of technology, sustainability, and wealth. Ferguson's role as global brand ambassador was marketed as a comeback moment, the Duchess aligning herself with innovation. But Pegasus was a mirage. Within 2 years, investors accused the founders of embezzlement and securities fraud, alleging that funds were redirected for personal luxuries, private jets, resort stays, and phantom construction contracts. Court filings later revealed that Ferguson had received £200,000 up front and a promised £1.2 million performance bonus, contingent on the project's success. When it failed, her name appeared on legal documents as a public endorser. For Williams' audit team, it was more than embarrassment, it was exposure. It wasn't about the sum, said one royal financial advisor. It was about her pattern of attaching the Windsor name to ventures with no due diligence. Even more concerning were transfers of £47,000 labeled Wellness Enhancements, Nevada Project, traced back to accounts previously used by Royal Lodge household staff. The same accounts had been partially funded by estate maintenance reimbursements approved during Charles's reign. In effect, public money meant for property upkeep had indirectly touched a crypto scheme in the American desert. William, upon reading the report, reportedly remarked, "Every corner we illuminate leads to another shadow." Prince Andrew, though publicly detached from Fergie's ventures, was privately complicit. Internal emails reviewed by investigators revealed correspondence between Andrew's former aides and Pegasus executives, in which he offered introductions to potential British energy partners. One memo even referenced Her Royal Highness's upcoming Nevada engagement, suggesting coordination. A palace source described William's reaction as controlled fury. William understood that Andrew was not merely negligent, he was enabling her. They operated like a closed circuit of denial, feeding each other's illusions of relevance and wealth. This revelation sealed the Duke of York's fate. Whatever residual royal support he had left evaporated. His remaining security detail was reassigned, and the Crown Estate announced a permanent review of all leasehold privileges held by Andrew's family. Under William's directive, Project Purity entered Phase 2, a sweeping financial integrity operation across royal households. For the first time, every royal engagement, sponsorship, and outside income source was subjected to compliance review. Royal courtiers, long accustomed to discretion, now faced formal audits under the Treasury's oversight. Even the Royal Foundation, run by William and Catherine, released an unprecedented public statement confirming it would publish full annual financial disclosures in line with corporate governance standards. The message was clear. Transparency was not a gesture, it was the new law of the House of Windsor. Yet, outside the palace walls, public fascination with Fergie only intensified. Tabloids devoured every leak from the audit, portraying her as both villain and victim, a woman incapable of resisting glamour, trapped by her own appetites. Interviews resurfaced where she described money as a living beast I could never tame. But in William's eyes, sentiment no longer excused systemic decay. He sees this as moral reconstruction, explained royal historian Helen Stoddard. Every reform, every confrontation with the Yorks is about building a monarchy that can survive another century, untainted, unbought, and uncompromised. By mid-2025, the financial investigation had frozen over £3.7 million in assets linked to dormant entities associated with Fergie's brand operations. Some insiders believe the real figure is higher. Meanwhile, Andrew's private legal team began discreet negotiations to settle estate liabilities before potential criminal inquiries could escalate. The monarchy, for its part, moved to redefine its image. William's administration emphasized austerity, fewer palaces open for private use, stricter spending audits, and a ban on family endorsements without approval. The York era of indulgence is over, one senior aide said. William wants the public to see the difference between royalty as duty and royalty as decadence. Still, a question lingers across Fleet Street newsrooms and social media alike. Can the monarchy truly separate itself from its past when the ghosts of financial scandal live within its own bloodline? In the corridors of Windsor, where portraits of kings and queens line the walls, that question no longer feels rhetorical. As one insider put it, the monarchy's greatest threat isn't rebellion, it's rot. And the rot, as the investigation proves, didn't start in the Nevada desert. It began at home inside the gilded gates of Royal Lodge. The storm that began at Royal Lodge did not end there. Within weeks of William's unprecedented purge, the palace walls themselves began to tremble. Beneath the polished smiles and official statements, old alliances were fracturing, and the ghosts of loyalty to Andrew and Fergie still haunted the corridors of Buckingham and Clarence House. For decades, Prince Andrew had cultivated quiet allies, private secretaries, security officers, even retired equerries who had remained sympathetic to the Yorks. Many viewed William's audit as a betrayal of family before institution. Now, these same figures whispered warnings to journalists, leaking fragments of internal memos and painting the heir as ruthless, cold, and determined to humiliate his uncle publicly. But William was unmoved. His mission, palace insiders confirmed, had entered its decisive stage, a complete severing of financial and symbolic ties between the monarchy and the York household. That meant no more shared staff, no shared estates, and no shared image rehabilitation. Still, behind the scenes, King Charles hesitated. Though frail and increasingly sidelined by health concerns, he remained protective of Andrew, perhaps out of paternal guilt. Sources close to the king said he pleaded for a quiet resolution, urging William not to turn reform into punishment. For William, it was too late for subtlety. The monarchy's survival, he believed, depended on confrontation, not concealment. The public won't forgive another scandal hidden under velvet drapes, he told advisors during a tense Kensington meeting. If we don't cut the infection now, it will poison the next generation. Resistance came swiftly. Several longtime courtiers loyal to Charles and Andrew began to question the legality of William's financial interventions, citing the Crown Estate's independent status. Anonymous columns appeared in sympathetic newspapers describing the heir as an unelected accountant masquerading as king. Even Queen Camilla, though careful to avoid direct opposition, was rumored to have complained privately that William's campaign risked turning a family house into a corporate tribunal. But Catherine, ever the quiet counterforce, reinforced her husband's strategy. Through carefully crafted public appearances, visiting children's hospitals, hosting charity events, wearing modest attire, she embodied the opposite of the York image: discipline, empathy, and restraint. It worked. Polling showed a sudden spike in public approval for William and Catherine, while support for Andrew and Fergie collapsed. The narrative had shifted. The young royals were cleansing the palace, the old ones had sold it out. Yet within Windsor, the toll was unmistakable. Long-serving staff described the atmosphere as ice-cold. Departments once linked by deference now operated under suspicion. Financial officers cross-checked one another's ledgers, and lawyers began drafting new ethics protocols that would force all royal family members, senior or minor, to disclose outside income annually. Andrew, stripped and isolated, was said to spend hours walking the empty gardens of Royal Lodge, railing at the betrayal of his own blood. Fergie, meanwhile, continued to court the media, speaking of resilience and healing, while quietly exploring a all-memoir proposal with an American publisher. To the public, these stories were sideshows, but to William, they were reminders of the deeper danger, that the monarchy's worst enemies weren't activists or Republicans, they were its own. As one palace insider told The Times, William's fight isn't against individuals, it's against a culture that mistook privilege for immunity. All deck. By the end of summer 2025, the York chapter was effectively closed. Their staff dismissed, their estate reclaimed, their influence erased. Yet the royal family itself had changed irrevocably. The House of Windsor was no longer an untouchable relic, it had become a battlefield for accountability. And in that battlefield, William had drawn his sword not against the people but against his own bloodline. By autumn 2025, the shock of William's royal purge had settled into a new, uneasy normal. For the first time in living memory, the monarchy was not united by ceremony or blood, but divided by ideology. Those loyal to William spoke of renewal, integrity, and accountability. Those clinging to the old order whispered of cruelty, humiliation, and betrayal. The royal house had survived divorces, deaths, and even Diana's tragedy, but never before had its future king dismantled his own family's privilege in public view. Inside Kensington Palace, William's war room had transformed into a command center for a new monarchy. Spreadsheets replaced handwritten ledgers. Auditors replaced queries. Every estate, every royal patronage, every private investment was now under review. Catherine, who had quietly become the palace's emotional anchor, ensured that reform was paired with empathy. While William cleaned the institution's finances, she tended to its image. At charity events and hospital visits, the Princess of Wales embodied dignified contrast, modest dress, calm tone, and a focus on service over spectacle. Commentators noted that while Fergie once traded her title for profit, Catherine was turning duty into currency, earning back public trust one gesture at a time. "She's doing what Diana did, but without the chaos," one royal biographer remarked. And William knows that her moral credibility is now the monarchy's most valuable asset. Oh. Meanwhile, King Charles grew quieter by the day. Sources close to Clarence House describe the monarch as visibly diminished, struggling to mediate between his son's uncompromising reforms and the emotional wreckage left behind. He had long tolerated Andrew's dependence and Fergie's excesses, convinced that time and dignity would bury their scandals. But William's forensic campaign left no room for sentimentality. In one tense meeting, Charles reportedly sighed, "You've stripped the house bare, William. Be careful what's left when the light hits." William's reply was as precise as his audits. "Truth, sir, that's what will be left." To the public, that truth looked like progress. But to the family, it felt like exposure. Old courtiers described a cold professionalism, overtaking royal life tradition, replaced by corporate efficiency, affection, replaced by accountability. For the first time, senior aides began using a new term, the Windsor Directorate. If William was the enforcer, Catherine became the redeemer. Her growing influence was unmistakable. When she attended a women's health summit in Geneva that November, the international press hailed her as the moral compass of modern royalty. In subtle contrast to the York chaos, she spoke about the responsibility of influence and the ethics of legacy. Her words, calm yet firm, echoed through every editorial. Behind the scenes, Catherine persuaded William to temper the tone of his crackdown. "Reform without grace breeds fear, not respect," she reportedly told him. Her touch softened the campaign's image, transforming what began as a financial investigation into a moral reawakening. Yet, her rise also fueled tension. Some insiders warned that the couple's growing dominance, financial, moral, and symbolic, was eclipsing the king himself. Others quietly wondered whether this was the monarchy's natural evolution or its quiet coup. By year's end, polls revealed a stark divide. 80% of Britons approved of William's reforms. Only 27% expressed sympathy for Andrew and Fergie. But the emotional cost to the family was incalculable. Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, were seen less in public. The once bustling York circle had withered into silence. At Buckingham receptions, the absence of the Yorks was palpable, like a missing note in a familiar anthem. The grandeur remained, but the warmth was gone. "It feels clinical now," one palace staffer whispered. "We used to serve a family, now we serve an institution." Still, the institution had survived, and for William, that survival justified every sacrifice. In private, he confided to aides that his grandmother's final lesson had been to endure the storm so the crown can stand dry. And so he did. With each disclosure, each policy, each symbolic act of accountability, William was not merely preparing for kingship, he was redefining it. But in doing so, he had also awakened a new question that no monarch had dared face before. Can a crown built on love endure once love is replaced by judgment? By winter 2025, the dust had settled, but the monarchy no longer looked the same. The gates of Royal Lodge stood locked, its windows dark, the lawns unkept, a silent monument to everything William had vowed to end. Inside palace corridors, staff spoke of the York silence, a void where scandal once echoed. Sarah Ferguson's empire was gone, her accounts frozen, her public appearances dwindling to whispers of self-help videos and hollow apologies. Her final fall came quietly, a bankruptcy filing shielded behind corporate jargon and consultant restructuring. The woman who once dined with billionaires and charmed talk show hosts now lived in rented obscurity. Her daughters, torn between filial loyalty and royal survival, kept their distance. Andrew remained at Royal Lodge only in memory, his legal challenges unresolved, his relevance extinct. Meanwhile, William stood taller, not because of triumph, but of exhaustion. He had purged the family to save the crown, and in doing so, learned how lonely integrity could feel. "We can't preach service if we live on secrets," he told Catherine one frost-lit evening at Windsor. She touched his hand but said nothing. Both knew the price had been paid in bloodline. Catherine's quiet influence became the monarchy's new rhythm, measured, modest, moral. Together, they rebuilt the royal image around transparency and duty. The press called it the Windsor Renewal. But to those inside, it felt more like atonement. Historians will call it the turning point, the moment the British monarchy ceased being a dynasty of indulgence and became a dynasty of accountability. Yet in that transformation lay a paradox. purity had saved the crown, but it had also stripped it of its warmth. Fergie's scandal would be remembered not for its greed, but for what it revealed: that royal power without restraint becomes decay, and redemption demands exile. And so, as the century turned toward a new reign, the lesson of Sarah Ferguson's ruin lingered in Windsor's marble halls. Gold may dazzle, one aide reflected, but it's truth that keeps the crown from rusting.